On today's episode of Locked On Suns, we are at the quarter mark of the NBA season. It's time for report cards. We're going to grade every Suns player, coach, executive, and more. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show wherever you get your podcasts. A big thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to close out your week. Hopefully you just ignored the NBA Cup semifinals, just shadow banned them from your own home because the Suns are not in it. But we have a Suns basketball game on Friday night at home against the Sacramento Kings. We'll talk about that game a little, preview that, but really dive in on each and every Suns player today. We're free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube, so hit follow or subscribe. If you have not already, get a new show in your feed every Monday through Friday. Become an everydayer and get locked onto the Suns right along with me every day for the rest of the season. Aaron Edwards is here as he is every Friday to close out the week and give out our report cards. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA when you make your first deposit. That's all lowercase, all one word, for a deposit match up to $100. We'll talk about Prize Picks more later on. All right, Aaron, we're going to give report cards out. We're going to give A through F. Maybe you want to go E or G or H. Well, I'll let you evaluate that as you want. But let's start with Devin Booker. He is, of course, the star player of this team. He has only played 12 games in this stretch, 12 out of 20, 12 out of 21. 27 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds, 47% from the field, 41% from three, 94% from free throw line at the most attempts per game. So that is definitely a highlight. He is looking like a point guard. What is your evaluation of Book? We can give our grades after we talk about him a little bit, so don't give away your letter here. But what have been your thoughts on Book's start to the season?
He's done everything asked of him with one of the players that was supposed to take kind of the load off for him. So, yeah, I think just the fact that he's kind of learning on the fly. I mean, he's done this the beginning of his entire career, but he's kind of just seeing the game a lot better, and he just looks like he's a true point guard. Lakers stinker aside, I think that everything that he's been asked to do, he's done it, and he's done it at a high level while also not losing his scoring. That was my big thing. I was just like, I don't want the best shooting guard in the NBA to forget and just be a point guard, and he's kind of found a really good mix of both. Yeah.
One thing I will say is his 3-point frequency is down a little bit, and it's just, it feels like such a lazy thing to keep going back to. But even Anthony Davis said it in the lead up to that Tuesday game, where he's like, to have Book add the free throws, the passing, and all that stuff while still being a threat from deep just makes him so much harder to guard. And I want Booker to hear that. You know what I mean? I don't know if he cares what Anthony Davis thinks, but I believe he took 1 in that quarterfinal game. And so I think you're absolutely right. I don't want to make it a negative, but this stretch from Booker has made me realize the value of Beal, if that makes sense. Because you're going to just see Book go to another level. And to your point, it's crazy to think he's had this kind of start when we know the stretch run of the season is when Book peaks. So there might be even more in store here as well, and I think Beal will have a lot to do with that.
Yeah, I think that once we find the real actual mix of what he's going to do, once we can start setting pin downs for him and he's not initiating the offense and he's doing the Book, catching it at the top of the free throw line and doing the stuff that he can do in his sleep pretty much. Once we can go to that stuff in stretches, because he's going to get blitzed and stuff if he touches the ball. So I think that once you can get Book off ball and you're comfortable with somebody else with it, we're going to actually see what this offense could look like when Beal can just be a shooting guard and just do the stuff that he can do automatically on any given night.
Yeah, I'm looking at his shot selection so far. He's leaned even more into the mid-range this season, and he is, I would say, the one knock that I would also put in there, and I'm jumping around a little bit, but I was trying to go back, and I don't have a subscription for the website, but dunksandthrees.com, their estimated plus minus is kind of like the one people use the most these days, and he's a negative defensively, 41st percentile as a defensive player so far. And that's not a gold standard by any means, but I do think there have been moments, the Raptors game, the Lakers game, where because he's so overwhelmed offensively, struggling, forcing it, maybe the fouls, everything else, that there have been some off-ball defensive moments that he had started to iron out that I think have flared up, and that's going to be what this season is about. And I think when Beal comes back again, that'll help to balance everybody's roles and responsibilities, and he'll be able to settle into a groove, I think, and hopefully be a little bit more impactful defensively too. What's your grade?
I'm going to go B+ just to give room for improvement. Like, I could say A, but I think that, yes, he's been a really good point guard and initiating the offense and stuff, but I think once we can see the mix of point guard and shooting guard Book and not so heavy initiating offense, I think that's when he's going to be an A, when you can just like, all right, somebody run point, set the screen for Book off ball. You can do that stuff. And once you can see off ball Book more, because he's incredible at it, I think that's when he's going to be an A, because he has a lot to carry right now.
Yeah, I will go with I'll go with an A- as well. I was hoping you would go A+ and I could make the point you just made, but then you made that point. I just think, look, it's hard to pick any sort of nits, but I do think the defense is one, and I do think that he's had some strange games, right? I think the Lakers and Raptors games recently have shown the limitations. There's even been moments within other games like the Grizzlies or whatever where you're just sort of like, okay, like you get why the roster's built the way that it is, and now he's going to hopefully have a chance to show what he can do within the full roster. Let's go to Kevin Durant. I think this guy's just been absolutely insane, to be honest with you. I think the one thing
like,
that...
how are we going to do this? Because I feel like our grade's going to be the same, and everybody knows what our grade's going to be. So
it's like, how do you even provide balance to your analysis here? He's shooting 52% from the field, 50% from three, 89% from the free throw line. He's averaging 5.7 assists per game, which is something that is definitely picked up in the latter half of his career. And I guess the one negative you maybe could say is that he hasn't been able to impact the game defensively and as a rebounder, but I don't blame him on that at all, because I think that a lot of that is the personnel and the fact that he's having to do so much on offense, and the defense has been pretty inconsistent all season. So I'm not going to sit here and blame that on Durant either. We saw even next to Ayton and like Torrey Craig, he could be a really big help as a defensive player. So I expect that to click into place once their personnel gets sorted out. So I'm going A+, and I'm not really thinking too hard about it.
Yeah, I'm going A+ too. And yeah, the defense isn't really on him. The turnovers are frustrating sometimes, but when you have the ball that much, and when Book is out, and when you have to have lineups with Okogie and non-scorers on the floor at the same time, like you just have to kind of carry that load. And like he said, he's going to get doubled. They get tight on him. They try to push him around. So yeah, like the turnovers, you just gonna have to live with it. And I think he said that during the interviews. He was like, you're gonna have to live with the turnovers if I'm getting triple teamed, and we're just gonna have to live with those.
And look, I mean, statistically, he's averaging fewer turnovers than he did in 39 games last year with Brooklyn in terms of turnover rate. How much out of the time he's on the court does he turn over the ball? And it's about even with what it was the year before that. So and less than what it was the year that they were like the best offense we've ever seen with Kyrie and Harden. So I just think the alternative, as we've seen, is that he tries to do too much, drives into traffic, and gets stripped. That's just not his game. So I actually think his approach has been pretty solid. And yeah, there's going to be games where that just results in more turnovers than you'd like to see. So I think we're both on the same page with an A+. Let's move on to the role players after a quick break. First, today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. The basketball season is here. You can now pick combo projections across football and basketball using Prize Picks Specials League. That's a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, you want to go LeBron James and Travis Kelce, just, really go for the most famous guys you can find. Threes made plus receptions. Prize Picks gives you that line. You go more. It's their projection. They give you that projection. You go more. You get your money. That's how it works. You could even go a little doubled up on the Thursday night action. Patriots, Steelers. Maybe you go more on George Pickens yards, and then maybe you go more on Zion Williamson points, and you can mix and match that way. It's part of what I love about Prize Picks, but they also offer a reboot policy for injuries on your lineup. They also offer quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players. All of that makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. You can go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA when you make your first deposit to get it matched up to $100. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. When you make your first deposit, LockedOnNBA, when you make your first deposit for an instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, let's keep it rolling here, Aaron. I will give you the floor. Let's talk about, who do you want to do? Pick a role player that you have the strongest opinion about, and we can give grades on that guy.
I wouldn't say strongest, but let's get the one that we're probably going to be all over the place with. So let's go Nurk.
Okay. Yeah. I've talked a lot about Nurkic the past couple of weeks. I don't know if you saw Frank Vogel called him this stretch of basketball. Like he said, the past 8 to 10 days has been the best he's played. I kind of agree, but I guess the question is, if that's the best he's played, what is the ceiling? If that's the best you're going to get, what are we looking at here? So what are your thoughts on him? More good than bad, more bad than good? What do you think?
I think it's more good than bad. I like the second half opportunities he has been giving us, but when it looks bad, it looks really bad. And you can just we don't want to look too far, forward in the future, but what's going to come up, and he's going to get played off the floor sometimes, unless we're playing the Timberwolves or something. So I think
Nuggets.
So I think when you're seeing the future and you get matched up with the Lakers, he literally won't be able to play in that series or something like that. So that's my biggest beef. If it has to be a perfect storm of stuff to happen for it to look the best. And if we get one hiccup with a big that can move or do anything or get to the line, he's kind of screwed.
Yeah, a few interesting stats on Nurkic. He is shooting 26% from 3 on how many attempts per game? 2.4. So basically the same number of attempts per game as he had with the Blazers last year, but not making nearly as many. There are a lot of those are obviously very wide open. Shooting 47% overall from the field. A lot of that is weighed down by his three-pointers, but the twos have been a little worse as well. He is averaging a full assist per game more than he did last year. And his block rate is up at 3.8% of possessions. So that would be the best since the year after the leg injury. I think that's a really good statistic, and back near kind of his physical peak, his athletic peak, or what we thought was his athletic peak. So all in all, and you can look at some of the stats of what his field goal percentage allowed is within the restricted area and all that stuff, and that would show you it pretty well. I have it right here. Less than 6 feet, he's allowing teams to shoot 53%, which is almost 8 percentage points better than the Suns' overall number. So I agree, more good than bad, but the limitations, they didn't magically go away. So I guess I'm not going to necessarily measure him against that. One question I have for you, though, is does it give you any reservations or disappointment that Portland is 12th in defense right now?
No, because we're going to talk about Grayson Allen in a little bit.
Okay. All right, so what's your grade for Nurk?
B-, C+.
C+?
Yeah.
All right, let me go with B+. I think relative to expectations, if you had told Suns fans that they were going to get a passable defensive season from Nurkic, at least where he's executing what he's being asked to do, and that he would become such a fulcrum of this offense so quickly. We knew the missed shots and weird decisions and strange stuff and foul trouble. All that was built in. We knew that. I think if you had told Suns fans that they were going to get this from Nurkic through 21 games and that he would be healthy, that he would... I know that I don't factor that in a ton, but it is true. He's been able to play and play heavy minutes. I think that Suns fans would be really, really impressed. So I'm not going to give him an A because it's not like he's some sort of all-star right now, but relative to expectations, I think he's been pretty good. So I'll go with the B+. Let's just do Grayson Allen next then.
Okay.
I think Grayson Allen, in terms of one specific thing, has been one of the most pleasant surprises of the season, and that thing is he is just a natural fit next to Book and KD. Like, all those guys that they put together in Brooklyn, some of the players we saw step in and play well, even last season in Phoenix, the chemistry that that KD had with even like Jock Landale, or in the Warriors days, the fact that he was just so fluid and comfortable with Draymond. Like, I think Grayson Allen fits that mold really, really well, and obviously the three-point shooting helps, but he just feels very invaluable to this team. I don't know where this season would have gone if his steadiness and his kind of comfort with the stars wasn't there.
Yeah, I was just surprised by just his comfort with the ball in his hands, getting downhill, getting fouled. Like, I think all of it on offense, like, he was just a surprise in general. I'll be honest, like, I didn't watch that many Grayson Allen games, but
it's the Shaq Christian Wood meme. You're the Shaq Christian Wood meme with Grayson Allen, yeah.
Yeah, but we didn't have that many other people other than Book and CP last year that were comfortable with the rock in their hands. And now we do. Like, I wouldn't call them point guards, but they are comfortable having the ball. Like, they're kind of score first players, but just having a person that has the ball in his hands and he doesn't get frazzled and he knows what to do with it for the most part. Like, that was the biggest surprise for me, is just his comfort level on the floor and having the ball. Like, it's not like the Okogie situation where he's going to turn down a corner three. Like, if he touches his hands and he's open, like, they're comfortable with him shooting it and he's comfortable shooting.
Yeah, highest at-rim frequency of his career, highest fouls drawn of his career, or the number of shots where he gets fouled since he was a rookie, but he didn't play a ton as a rookie, and the highest assist rate of his career. And I think one thing I will say about Grayson is I think that the reputation for him defensively was maybe overblown. It's not to say he's bad, but when you play next to Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Brook Lopez, like me and you, probably get a few $1 million for being a good defender with that lineup. So, I think maybe we can put to rest the idea that he's going to be some sort of stopper for this team, but he can hold his own, and he's a smart player. So I will give Grayson Allen an A-, primarily because of the defense maybe being a little less than I thought, and him just sort of being a piece there rather than like an impact guy. But you couldn't ask for much more, so that might be too harsh. What do you have?
Yeah, I was going to give him an A- too. Like, I think that just what he's given this team in general, and once he's the sixth man, I think he's going to get an A+ with that. Like, once he's first guy off the bench and he's our really, like, efficient sixth man that can get to the line and be comfortable with some of the starters, I think that's when he's going to be really valuable.
Yeah. All right. Let's go on to who should we go to next? Let's go to Drew Eubanks, who I thought played maybe the worst game of the season for himself on Tuesday. Was pretty close to unplayable. The thing that frustrates me the most with Eubanks, the more that I watch him, Aaron, is, and this is, like, we should say this, right? Like, a lot of these guys, the big thing heading into the season was, what does it look like when you're on a competitive team needing to win games and needing to adjust and make changes in-game, game-to-game, with great teammates, star players around you in order to really impact the game, not just flash some stuff on a tanker, right? And I think the thing with that context in mind for me that has been a little bit frustrating about Eubanks is he doesn't have great feel on offense. There's a lot of moments where if he catches the ball, it's not as natural to just reset things, go into a dribble handoff, go into a flow sort of, just let's run something to get a bucket. He bails on drives. He wants to fake a dribble handoff and drive to the basket or take advantage of space that's given, but he can't. I just think unless he's catching the ball 2 feet from the basket and dunking, I get a little bit panicked with him on offense. And then defensively, he's just small, but I'm not going to hit him too hard on that. What have your thoughts been?
Yeah, it started off really fun, but I think that now that they kind of know that he's a negative on offense, if he can't really rim run and he's kind of just out there on defense, teams, they watch film, they were going to figure him out sooner or later. And I think the fact that he's not really a great passer when Nurkic, once Nurkic sits, and it's just that it's such a huge drop off on their skills and what they can do for the offense that it's pretty noticeable once he is out there.
Yeah, early on in the season, the defense statistically was better with Eubanks on the court. That never felt real, but especially the reason it was the case, I think, is a lot of his minutes were coming with Goodwin and Okogie, or at least one of those guys. That's not as true anymore, but even if it is, the numbers have evened out. The defense is better with Nurkic, worse with Eubanks. I think that holds up. Do you think the Suns need to add another center? Is that priority number one for you?
Yeah, before I didn't, and it was the point guard thing, but I think the center is, unless we want to play Metu, and I don't know what the other option is. And I think Vogel, he was not shy about sitting dudes and changing lineups pretty quickly if it didn't work. So yeah, it depends on what Vogel's kind of down with at this point. He's been trying stuff. He knows the Bol thing isn't going to work, but there's no lack of trying to figure this out for Vogel. It's just the backup bigs aren't really that great, and they're small.
All right, you mentioned Vogel. We'll get to him next. We'll also look forward, evaluate what the lead executive, James Jones, for this team can do, maybe give a future guess of a grade, and close out with the defensive forwards, Goodwin, Bates Diop, Little, Okogie, all next. First, today's show brought to you by Jase Medical. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of life, but if we could talk just for a minute about preparing for real life, the FDA says pharmacies are running low on antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of a pretty bad flu season. That can get pretty scary, and it's not always easy when a kid or an older relative gets something like that, and silly supply chain issues keep them from life-saving medication. Thankfully, Jase Medical has been working to solve that problem. The Jase Case by Jase Medical is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, and other stuff. Could happen to anyone, and JaseMedical.com has your solution. Complete your physical physician evaluation at JaseMedical.com. Get it reviewed by a board-certified physicians, and then get your medications from a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's not just antibiotics. They have tons of stuff. I know antibiotics might not be everybody's favorite thing for every single type of illness, but check it out. They have physicians. They have the evaluations. They get it to you quickly and for cheaper. That's the bottom line. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to JaseMedical.com. Use the code LOCKEDON when you make your purchase to get $20 off your order. Get your Jase Case with 5 different antibiotics or poke around for other stuff. Again, that's JaseMedical.com, promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off. All right, Aaron, let's close it out. Let's talk about Vogel, since you mentioned him. Long-time friend on Twitter who I've never met in real life but has been on the show a lot of times, Max McCauley, went a little viral. He was the first person who I actually take seriously, who kind of seemed to have an issue with Frank Vogel. Every night, 100 people have an issue with Frank Vogel on the internet, Reddit or Twitter or wherever, the YouTube comments of this show. But I take Max seriously. I trust his judgment, and he went at Vogel, and I didn't understand it, and he didn't respond to me. So what do you think of Vogel? Has he been better or worse than you expected?
With what he's been given, I think about this, what I would have expected. I think that we should be in 6th, 5th in the West. Everything that we've been shown from them, and with the health of this team, being 5th or 6th, I forget where we are now. that's perfect. If anything, for like the final stretch, this is exactly where we should be given the situation that we're in. So yeah, I think with Monty, we probably would have all started fighting and killing each other by now. So I'm just glad that there's still some positivity, and we can see like when the Suns are rolling, like the defense looks good. They're out running. They're getting stops. Nurk is starting breaks. Like they're getting a transition. I think once it looks good, it looks good. But given what he's had, this is kind of what we should. This is where we should be.
I think the one thing that I expected Vogel to clean up that hasn't been clean is the transition defense. But what I will say is they've turned the ball over so much that it's kind of hard to evaluate that too. So
yeah, I mean, the Lakers shot like what 22 more shots than us. Like I don't think transition defense is gonna you can have the best transition defense in the world, but if you're always in transition defense, it's a pickup basketball game, and this is not going to be great.
Who's the player on this team that would have played way more, if Monty Williams was still the coach? I know the roster would have been built differently anyway, but just of the guys who are here, who would be playing so much that Suns fans would be infuriated?
I think
who's the Landry Shamet of this roster is basically my question.
I feel bad saying this, but I think it's Okogie.
I could see that. Although he benched Okogie against the Clippers, so I don't know.
Yeah, but and that's like the crazy part. I think that we have such good scoring now. Like I think he would go a different route with it, and he put somebody out there that we like. But I think if he's letting Okogie clank corner threes because his on-ball defense, and teams are just letting him get those shots up. I think we would turn on Monty if it was even though we love Okogie.
He also has the continuity, piece to him with Okogie, where it's like, we just treasure what Josh, he's been here, he's helped build the program, whatever. I guess I should have said the Killian Hayes of this roster. I guess that's the more modern example. My answer is Yuta Watanabe. I think he'd be playing like 30 minutes, and I think we wouldn't even have known what Keita Bates-Diop or Nasir Little look like. We would just be like, are they still on the team? Did they get cut? Like, what's going on? Those guys would never play. Yuta would be playing 30 minutes a game. He'd be a six-man, and Monty would just be loving the defensive execution and the connectivity that Watanabe provided. But out of that nightmare into the next player, let's talk about Jordan Goodwin and Josh Okogie. I think Jordan Goodwin's better than Josh Okogie. I know that Okogie plays with a little more force, a little more athleticism, but the offensive gap is pretty huge to me. So I will give Jordan Goodwin a B+. I will give Josh Okogie a B-. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there. I sometimes I want to give Jordan Goodwin an A because
I feel that.
I mean, yeah, he's just such a surprise. Like I know a bunch of Wizards fans are like, "You guys are getting a good one," and I was like, "Okay, like I've never seen this dude play before," but yeah, like he was probably even more than Grayson, the more pleasant surprise because the way Vogel was talking about it was like he takes too many chances, he fouls a lot, yada yada yada, but he's taking a step back on the chance taking, and he still is really, really strong on defense, and he gets in guards' grill, and he can rebound. He's comfortable getting shots up. He's comfortable running the offense, and that was the bigger surprise for me.
Yeah, 36% from three, and his fouls per 36 minutes are lower than they were last year, so that has to be a good sign. You compare the turnover creation between him and Okogie. Goodwin has a steal percentage of 2.1. Okogie's is 2.2. He has a block rate of 1.4. Okogie's is 1.7. So it's really not that different. He barely turns the ball over, which is pretty cool considering that he's a young guard, and he takes some bad shots at times, but I'd rather him just try to take a shot than just completely kill a possession. Okogie actually turns it over more than him despite not touching the ball as much. So I love it. I think that's all good stuff. Let's go to Nasir Little and Keita Bates-Diop, and then we'll talk trade stuff to close it out. What do you think of Nasir Little so far? Is he the answer we were looking for as sort of that athletic wing that they needed?
Yeah, when he's getting downhill, like you can tell, like in his thoughts, like he's trying to dunk on you. And I think the Suns haven't really had a dude like that in a long time that is trying to like not necessarily get to the line, but just run, and he knows that he's going to get his touches. He knows that he has to be ready for his touches. He's strong on defense. He's strong on ball. And he was kind of like the surprise. Even Blazers fans were like, if he's healthy, he's going to show you some stuff. And now that he's healthy, like, he does look good on the floor.
Yeah, 41% of his shots have come at the rim. He is making 64% of them, which is not elite, but passable. He's shooting 33% from deep. Doesn't get fouled a lot, which is a little weird, but, I think it's fine. It comes with the territory of being a younger guy. Also somebody who creates a lot of turnovers. I think, too, I have to factor in that I was pretty hard on him early on, and I fully understood why he was not in the rotation. Like, he was playing like North Carolina Nasir Little. He's playing like the guy who was supposed to be a top 10 pick and became the number 25 pick, right? And, like, I don't mean to be overly harsh, but that's the reality. I think he's come a long, long way, and I think he's become much more impactful, and I think now the only thing that I really hesitate about with him is obviously, the shots go in, but two, I'm like, he's just not as big. Like, he also has the aspect where he's only 6'6". And so you see him guarding LeBron or some of these other guys, like, okay, what if it's Giannis again in a final series? And, if they even get that far, like, well, damn, he's like giving up like 6 inches to Giannis, it feels like. So that's tough. But yeah, I will give Nasir Little an A. What do you have?
I'm going B plus. Like, because the first half of the quarters of the season, like, did happen, and he was bad, and he wasn't getting on the floor even, and there was a reason for that. So I'll give him a B plus, and just because this last stretch that he kind of did take off, and you can tell.
I'm feeling hope, but I think your rating is probably better. All right, Keita Bates-Diop. It's not going the way that I hoped that it would go here.
It's been close sometimes, though, but
there was that stretch around the Spurs game where it really felt like it was going to happen, and he had like 0 turnovers in the first like 60 minutes he played or something like that. Then he finally got 1 turnover against the Thunder, and it's kind of right around there that things flipped. He lost minutes again, and then I think the number one knock that I have to say about Keita Bates-Diop, and I say it all the time, it's not a surprise, but he has to take shots. He's shooting 27% from deep. I understand. Like, I don't know. Did you see that Quentin Grimes quote this week about how every shot that goes up, he feels like he's just going to get benched? And like, I'm sure
like
Keita Bates
pounds or something.
Yeah. He's like, the ball feels like it's 100 pounds. I think a lot of young players, a lot of role players Bates-Diop's 28, but inexperienced players on good teams go through that. And I mean, like, who am I to get in that headspace and say, like, buck up, kid? But like, I mean, the reality is, analyzing the team, you got to do better than that if you're going to play and impact the game the way that we know you can. So I don't know. I feel pretty down on him right now, and I'm going to go like a C.
Yeah, I was going to go C just because the minutes have to go somewhere, and you can tell it's very obvious somebody has to lose him, and he's making this choice pretty easy for Vogel.
Even though he's played less and maybe is less steady, would you have Metu as a better grade or more confidence right now than Bates-Diop? We won't do a whole Metu thing, but if you just had to compare those two?
I kind of like the Metu minutes, and he seems ready. Like, he hasn't been called a lot, but every time he's been called, he seemed like he's ready to go.
I think that they're going to have to come up with a go-to 5-man lineup with Durant at center. And I think that is up for the taking between Bates-Diop and Metu. And I think that's something I'm watching the next little stretch, especially if Beal gets back. Let's look ahead. We can't give James Jones a grade.
We didn't do Eric Gordon.
Oh, we didn't. I mean, okay. I was going to do him first, actually. Then we got off track with the Grayson Allen stuff and Nurkic. I think Aaron Gordon, it's like, I'll just give him an A. I mean, I don't know what he's shooting from 3. Sometimes I say stuff like that, and then I look and the stats are not what I was expecting. But yeah, he's at 41% from 3. Like, he's just done everything I would have expected. So I'll give Gordon an A.
Yeah, he's an A. I mean, he's really awful on defense sometimes, like really, really bad. But I'll give him an A because we didn't bring him here to do that. We brought him here to shoot long bombs, and he's been doing it.
Yeah, and I think if he has to guard like Desmond Bane or something, it's going to be ugly. But if he can guard, like, honestly, I like him guarding LeBron even though LeBron is way better than I would a smaller guard who he just isn't going to be able to keep up with. So I think part of that's just kind of the matchups and whatever. But all right, let's look ahead because I think it's getting to that time of year where we're seeing the rumors and the names and the slop out there in the trade market. Do you think the Suns make a trade now that we're where we are in the season and we have a little bit to evaluate? If I said over under half a trade, what do you say?
Yes, I think that the problems that aren't going to be fixed by Beal are still real problems, and we're going to have them later. So, yeah, I think we know what those problems are, and we need to make a trade.
And I kind of think they can get a buyout player at center. So I would be looking more at like probably a guard or a wing or really anything. Another playable roster piece with size. Let me say that would be my other priority. And I think that's something you probably have to trade for. Whereas another center option, it's like Daniel Tice just like asked to go play for the Clippers and they got him. I think the Suns could end up with something like that. So do you have a name? Do you have a type of player? Like what's your highest priority on as far as a trade goes? Because it's now that we know Little and Grayson are integral parts of the team, it's probably going to have to be stacking up minimum guys and second round picks and just kind of like, being a beggar on the street and showing people that like it's, the 1500s and you're asking for, like a piece of bread from somebody like that. That's what we're about to hit here with these trades.
I'm like, and it's probably even worse than that. We're going to be like, hey, Boogie, can you give us 10 minutes? Like, I think it's like,
hey,
worse
Dwight,
than that.
Can we?
So,
well,
so
maybe not Dwight.
It's a whole other thing. But I think that we're gonna be begging for scraps. But I think that just a backup big and just a presentable person that can run pick and roll at point guard and be comfortable with it. Just another person that can handle the ball would just be fun.
One other name that I like, and it's not a guard, it's not a playmaker, it's not a ball handler, but it is somebody who I think can maybe be the fifth guy to close, is Jae'Sean Tate in Houston. He is not like the sexiest name, but his salary is close enough that I think that they can make it work. He's at $6.5 million, and he is just a bowling ball. He's a little bit.
Yeah, he gets to the line. I remember last year he just got to the line like 12, 13 times against us. He was strong and he can handle the ball. And
he is making 34% of his threes this year. He's been just dying to play on a good team forever. I think he's somebody to have an eye on. Backup center, I don't know. I'm still not really convinced that it's going to make a difference if it has to be a buyout guy. The reality might just be Nurkic, Eubanks, and Durant. We'll see. I just wanted to throw that in there because usually I'll do a GM thing as a grade, but obviously the first quarter of the season, not a lot of GM action. But that will wrap us up. Be back next week with a recap of no Suns games, I guess the Kings game, but we'll look ahead beyond that. Don't forget to sign up for the Locked On Suns Insider text alerts at the link in the show description below. You can also follow on TikTok at that link in that show description as well, or search Locked On Suns on TikTok. I'll be back later on Friday with a audio exclusive, only on the audio feed, preview for Suns Kings. And if that game's crazy, maybe I'll do a bonus show on Friday night. We'll see. But that will wrap us up. I will talk to you guys next time.